Hello, my friends. This is Linda. Stampwithlinda@live.com is how you can reach me. Today I'm going to show you the Sand and Sea collection. And as part of the Sand and Sea collection, there is the Friends Are Like Seashells stamp set and corresponding dies. If you look right here, here are some of the corresponding dies that go along with it. And I'm going to show you some of the fun things that you can do with this set because it can be, I think, a little intimidating. There's things that that you just may not realize that you can do with it. So along with this suite, you will find that there is a package of designer paper that coordinates, and here is some of the paper that is with it. You have the sand dollar and the thing. You have some great shells that you can hand cut out. The only thing I don't like about this particular paper is it's got the sand on the background, so if I cut out the shells I lose my sand. But there's 2 sheets, so I'm sure I'll end up with a lot of things to play with. We have the that's a double in there. We have some starfish and some kind of mottled pink, which has probably Melon Mambo, Blushing Bride, Flirty Flamingo in there. We have just a nice blue mottled background with some sea urchins, I think is what those are on the back. Then we have this paper, which actually I cut. So this is a gradient. If you can see, it's got some yellow. It's actually So Saffron is the color that coordinates with this paper. Flirty Flamingo, Melon Mambo, and then you've got your blues, your Misty Moonlight, and your Seaside Spray. I coordinate, and on the back you have some shell paper as well, which is really pretty. So that is some of the designer paper. Also, as part of the suite, you will find these opal rounds, which are very, very cute. I'll show you some cards in a minute that have the opal rounds on them as well. And I think we'll get started showing you some of the fun things to do with this. As you can see in the set, you've got some 2-step stamping. So you've got the shell here with the 2-step stamping. So let's start by, let me show you a little bit of what you can do with that. So I'm going to use 2 different colors coordinating. I'm going to use the Blushing Bride, which is the lighter of the colors, and the Flirty Flamingo. And we will take the background and put it in the Blushing Bride and lay that down. No, that might end up being a little bit darker than I want it to be. Well, let's just see here. I'm going to take our Flirty Flamingo and lay that over it. It may not come out as well because I think the background's a little bit darker than I like. Oh, I think it's all right. And then you can hand cut it, or you can use the die, which I'll pull back in afterwards when I show you the die to show you how to do that. Let's close those up for now so I don't put anything in. So here I hand cut the shell out, and of course my cutting style is skills are not as perfect as I would like. It still comes out all right. And this one I use the die to actually run it out. So if I pull the die out here, we're going to use the die anyway, so let me pull it out. We've got this die here, so what we could do is, I would of course cut the paper because I don't want to waste all this paper over here, but I would put it through here like this, and the die will cut that portion out. And that's what I did with one of the other things. In the meantime, let's see, you have this big die right here, and this big die is a 1-cut thing. And what you'll get when you use this is you will get this. And you think, what am I going to do with that? Well, the first thing you can do with it is you can take it and use the stamps to stamp in it. So I think I'm going to, on this one, I'm going to use the Seaside Spray. which is one of the in colors. So we take the shell that coordinates with that. It goes here, and then we're going to stamp it on here. And I'm going to tell you, if you're running it also through the embossing folder, that is also a part of this suite. It doesn't necessarily have to be 100% perfect. Actually, look at that. That's probably the first one I got that's perfect. Perfectly lined in the center there. Then you can go ahead and stamp. We have this die here, which I did in a little bit of Sahara sand. And let's see if we can get this one on there as well. Not quite as perfect, but you'll see when we run it through the die that it doesn't necessarily matter. And we'll do a little bit of, I'm using Daffodil Delight, even though it calls for So Saffron. The So Saffron is just so light that it's harder to see. So I thought, at least for demo purposes, that I would use Daffodil Delight on this. But you don't have to use the colors that are in the Designer Series paper by any means. So we have that shell. And we'll go back to using our, I think I'll use the lighter Blushing Bride for this last one. Oops, almost put it in the blue. See, this is why I like to close up my ink pads. So then we'll put this one on here. And it would be probably lined up a little bit better if I could put my head right over it, but I don't want to have to show you the top of my head. And then we have this other stamp right here, which, as you can see, is a little stained because, again, I'm using the pinks. And we'll do this one in Flirty Flamingo. Let's see if we can get at least somewhat close on this. How it should be. Yep, a little light on there, but it may not even matter when I run it through. You'll notice that obviously there's no stamps that coordinate exactly with your grasses, but what you can do for the grasses is you can take and color them. So I'll show you on this one. This one I started to use the blends to color, but you could use the blends, you could use colored pencils, the watercolor pencils, you can use regular marker. There's all kinds of options for coloring this in. Do the seagrasses different colors to add a little bit more color to this. It's pretty colorful right now, as you can see. And then what you can do is we have this great embossing folder. And this embossing folder, as you can see, lines up with the die. So when we put this through here like this, line up our shells as best we can. We put it in like that, and we run it through our cut and emboss machine or our Big Shot. Then what we do is we come out with this. And this raises up the texture of the shells. So if you can see that, you've got the shells with texture now, which is really very, very cool. So that's using the embossing folder, which we have here. I'm also going to show you what we also have with this wonderful suite is Pearlized Paper. And let me see if I can get a sheet of that right there. This is all I have left of the 2 sheets of Pearlized Paper. I don't know if you can see the shine on it. But it's very, very pretty for this. So when I use this, I cut it in 4 inches, and then I could run it through to cut this out, as you can see. So when I cut it out, and I have a pearlized version of this, and then when I stamp on it, because then you got to stamp on it and then run it through your embossing folder. And what you have when you run it through is this. I don't know if you can see the sheen in that is just gorgeous. Be careful when you're using the pearlescent paper and you stamp on it. Give it plenty of time to dry because the ink does not dry very fast on this. And when you run it through the folder, some of the ink will come off on the folder, which is fine. Because you're lining up perfectly, it's not necessarily ruining your stamped image. But if you're making more of these, then you want to make sure that you check your folder that it's been cleaned. So we have the pearlized version here. And again, you can take your blends and color on here, which I did. Now, when you come out with this image, here's the one again that I've put stamped, run the die through, stamped on it, run it through the embossing folder, and colored the seagrasses. And that's the final version that I got with that. And then you can take it and you can mount it on a piece of designer paper like I did here. But I also want to show you that when you have your when you come out with your sheet like this, you can also cut out these shells. So if you can see here, I've already cut out this shell right here, which was right here. So I cut it out, and then I can use the shell for a card as well. So you're not limited to just using the shells in this configuration, because it's really easy to just come along and take your paper snips and just kind of come along and meet up your lines here, and you've got another shell. That one I didn't cut very well on that one. So you just kind of snip off your extra pieces if you've got them, because you didn't cut it out the first time very well. But so you just kind of go around and cut your curves. I kind of follow the grasses are raised, so if you follow along the raised part of the grasses, it helps cut it out. So now once you cut out your pieces, you can lay them on top of, this one happens to be all connected, so it's all the same piece. I just ran it through and colored it. But this one here, you can see I ran a sheet of green. In this case, it was Pear Pizzazz. This one is a Old Olive, so I ran this through, did the shells, and now I can I can mount the shells on here, and I don't have to worry about coloring the grasses because the grasses are already colored with the cardstock. So you have this option here as well. Now, as you can see, I have this one here where I use the Pear Pizzazz as the background. I did the shell separately and cut them out. This one I used Melon Mambo. That's why it's a little bit darker than the one you've got here. But you can also take this design, and if you run your vellum paper through the die, so this one I just put a vellum paper, ran it through the die. Now I can take it and put it right on top of the thing. Mount it right on top of my card. So I could take this one here that I've done like this and mount this, and you've got a nice little subtle made it more of a, I guess it's more of a open, I don't know. it gives it a very cool look. Well, these obviously you can see I colored the stamp, used a little different ink for some of the colors, but it's basically the same principle. I took this design where I used the background I did it again, get the shells, and then I put the vellum right on top of it that I had run through. So you have that option there. Now, don't think that you don't have to make a simple card by putting the pearlescent paper through I cut the die out, I put the die, what came out, through the embossing folder, and this is what I got. And I just mounted it onto some of the designer series paper, used some of the designer paper to write on. I actually cased or copied this design from someone else, and I thought, well, that's a great way to show how to use just a basic design. Here I've got the pearlescent paper that, again, I've hand colored the grasses on this one. Nothing's cut out. Use the pearlescent, and I mounted it on cardstock. Gave it a nice little saying on it. Here, some of you may already have, we also have another embossing folder. So here I'm basically using two different embossing folders. We have this embossing folder here, which is a seaside, or with a bunch of different seagrasses in it. So I ran that through for the background using seaside spray paper and mounted it on. And here you'll see I've used the opal rounds that kind of look like bubbles underneath the sea. So I really like the sparkle and stuff on this one. Now we've got, now you could also cut the vellum paper out, and then run it through the embossing folder, just line it up with the shells as it is. And that'll give you a little more texture to it. And either, like I said, you could cut them out, you could mount them on a regular card. This one's nice and dark, so it kind of gives it more of a 3D look to it. So there you have an option there. And then my final cards I wanted to show you, where I used, I just used the designer paper here for the background, and I just cut out the shells. And when you cut out the shells, you're also going to be left with the seagrasses in them. Let me show you here. Here's the one that I actually cut. Oh, no, I can't even show you that one because I already cut out the seagrasses on this one. So if you, well, here you could use it with the cardstock. So if you're just going to cut out along the shell, you've got a thing of seagrass that you can put behind. This one here, these two right here are, when you cut out this along these two, you get a really nice big piece that goes behind the shells when you stack them up. Stack them. Here you can see I used that paper with the sand on the bottom of it. It's got the shells that you can cut out of the designer paper, so I put that down there, just to show them sitting on the sand on the seabed. And then this one I also use, which is still current in the main catalog, the High Tide set, and I used the sand stamp in there, and I used the water stamp and just kind of double stamped it along with the seagulls. And then I just kind of brushed on a little ink using our new wonderful blending brushes, which I will do another video perhaps next week showing you how to use those. Unfortunately, they're all on back order, and I think they're coming in maybe this week or next. So I kind of wanted to hesitate to show you the blending brushes. They come in a pack of 3, and they are just really, really easy to work with. So I have the scenes that you can create, or I just use the shells. There's also other shells in the set. Here I used, you probably have seen this card already because I've done another video on it. I use the designer paper. And then also in here is you've got the sand dollar and the starfish and the shells individually there that you can do. And it comes with, there's a die for cutting out the sand dollar with the little notch in it as well. There's a little shell for cutting out this shell after you've stamped it. There's a couple things of seagrasses, so you'll see I've stamped on Just Jade the 2 different seagrasses and used the dies to cut those out. And then of course there's the starfish that I stamped and cut out with the die. So that's just a little taste of all the different things you can use with this stamp set and die set. Coordinating, like I said, the opals, the pearlescent paper. This has got the pearlescent paper on it. I think pretty much I've used everything on these on these samples here. Got our designer paper, our stamp set, our dies, our embossing folder, designer series paper, the pearlescent the opal rounds, and the pearlescent paper. So hope you enjoyed this video. If you're interested, you can order on my website, www.lindasolomon.stampinup.net, Solomon with all O's, and you could place your order. And if you place your order tomorrow, March 17th, which is St. Patrick's Day, 2021, it's got to be this year, you get free shipping on your order of $50 or more. So that's a great way to get this set on that day and get free shipping along with it if you get the bundle. So hope that helps, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.